And now let's welcome Mr. Gordon Thomson, Senior Vice President, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Cisco, who will elaborate further on AI's role in optimizing and monetizing SPS. Mr. Thomson has implemented innovative go-to-market models that have accelerated the shift to software selling and digital transformation while building strong teams and followership. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good afternoon, Dubai. Good to see you all. It's great to be in a place where 5G is readily available. It's great to be in a place where fiber to the home is readily available. I live in the UK. I live 10 kilometers outside one of the biggest cities called Glasgow. 5G is inconsistent at best. And you know the way I get broadband into the house? I pay Elon Musk over $100 a month for Starlink services. That's the reality of where we are. And what I'd like to do with you today is talk about how in places like the UAE, where we're investing significantly in infrastructure, how we can take advantage of that with AI. And you've heard a lot about AI today. You've also just worked out that I'm from Scotland and I don't speak English, I speak Scottish. So you are probably not going to understand anything I say in the next 15 minutes. So bear with me. I'll try my best to speak slow. I'll try my best to get the message across. But as I mentioned earlier on, the telco industry is evolving and changing massively at the moment. We see the business models of all telcos change. They're all looking to monetize much faster than they did in the past. They're thinking about security much more deeply. They're starting to think about local and sovereign services. They're thinking about power and sustainability. Can that be a differentiator in the market? And yes, finally, we're all talking about the impact of AI in terms of bottom line and potentially top line costs as well. The way we build infrastructure, as you see in the bottom left-hand corner, is changing too. We're thinking about how we converge all of that infrastructure together. We're thinking about how we move services closer to the user and to the edge of the network. And then finally, the vast majority of service providers are completely changing their business model. They're operating in a world where we have different entities now that build out the infrastructure, the underlay, the netco, and they have different organizations that build out the services or the service factories that we take to market, the servco. And we're doing all of this in a world where it's hard to make money. It's hard to make more money than we're making or we used to make in the past. Think about the old fixed wire services and MPLS services we used to sell to our customers. We're now being dictated to by the consumer that says, I want internet-based services like SD-WAN. Well, when you sell SD-WAN services instead of MPLS, your revenues are much lower than they used to be, and it's very difficult to differentiate yourselves. In SD-WAN, the only thing you can do is prioritize the first hop of the journey of that traffic in its way into the cloud. And it's like saying to Google Maps, how do I get from the Cisco office to this event? And Google Maps says to me, Gordon, you turn right at the first junction, and then gives me no other information. How useful is that? How can you add value on top of that? How can you sell more services on top of that? The reality is you can't. The reality of the world we need to be playing in is where SD-WAN is the same as Google Maps, where SD-WAN can prioritize my traffic all the way through the network, including the public cloud, to make sure that you get the most optimized service possible for every application that you're using in the business. That's not a reality today. It's impossible today. But it's absolutely a reality tomorrow. And that's the power of AI, and that's the power of data. From Cisco's point of view, we are obviously building a strategy around both this servco approach and this netco approach. We're thinking about how we ultra-optimize the environment, how we make it really efficient for the telcos to operate, how we make it secure, and how we make it programmable. At the same time, we're talking to service providers and telcos about how they build their services on top of that. How you take an SD-WAN service to market, how you take a collaboration service to market, how you take security services to market. But the challenge is today that the underlay network infrastructure and the overlay services that we take to market are completely disconnected. There is no thread or unique value to connect the service you take to market to the underlay network infrastructure that you're building. Well, that reality is changing. And together we're getting to a point now where, through the use of AI, we can create that ultimate flexible service level agreement with a guaranteed SLA. And the minute we can offer a guaranteed SLA, guess what? We can charge more for it. We can increase our ARPU, we can increase our revenues. And that's the game changer that will be available to all telcos through the utilization of AI in their underlay infrastructure to support the overlay services that they take to market. From Cisco's point of view, we're thinking about simplified networks. We're thinking about how you converge IP and optical together. We're thinking about how you converge fixed and mobile services and other enterprise services together onto one network infrastructure. The reality is, any of the vendors like Cisco in the room today can simplify networks. Any of the vendors in the room can provide all of that simplification in terms of the connectivity you drive to market. But beyond that, what we have to do is drive an autonomous environment for our customers. We need to get to a point where ultimately the service provider can run that SOC, that NOC autonomously if they want to. And at the heart of your ability to drive better network management and autonomy is your ability to use data far more effectively than we do today. It's about how we make that intelligent data consumable and usable so that we can create those new ways of working together. Ultimately, Cisco's main investment over the last 5 years has been in this bottom area. It's been in this data and intelligence area because we realize the power of data. The power of data is going to help you get stronger visibility across your network environment. And if you can have stronger visibility and more information, it gives you a chance to be able to use that information to your benefit as we move forward. So from Cisco's point of view, we are thinking about how we can make the best data available. That comes today from our probes, everything in the network. It comes from the investments we've made in observability technologies, like Thousand Eyes that observes everything that's going on in the internet, like Ascidian Networks that observes everything that goes on within the service provider network to assure it, the likes of Sam Knows that looks at the last mile in terms of observability. But the game changer was the acquisition, the $28 billion acquisition of Splunk. Because the reality is, all of that information is great until you can ingest it properly in one place and then start to monetize the intelligence that you get from that. And that's what Cisco's on a journey to do, to help every service provider use this ingestion engine to change the game in terms of how you use data. But we're not just looking at the various different layers of the network to change the game in terms of that information. We know that we have to integrate OSS, BSS together. We have to work with people like Netcracker to integrate all of that information together so that ultimately the service provider can get best access to data to change the game. Changing the game is absolutely about simplifying networks. It's about converging networks. It's about automizing networks. But changing the game is truly about how you get better access to data and what you can do with data to help you drive your business both efficiently in the underlay and profitably on the overlay and the service factories that you create. I want to just give you a quick example. The example comes from Esports World Cup in the summer, earlier on this year. Esports was a tremendous event run in Saudi. They ran 22 different online games in that event. We had over 3,500 network interactions per minute on that event, and this is kind of what it looked like. You had the massive esports arena in Riyadh, looking at Wi-Fi, private 5G, all connecting all of the users together in that event. And in the old days, we would have pretended to have all of our services in the cloud, and we would have brought all the servers locally into the event and connected them all locally and said, aren't we great? We've created this fantastic level of service to deliver, but it was all delivered locally on the ground. Well, that wasn't the reality of what happened here. These services were absolutely delivered across a transport network. Yes, that transport network was Cisco, but then it went across international gateways made up of all of the different vendors that are in this room today, which ultimately then connected into the cloud to deliver all of the services that you see running across them. The only way you can deliver the assurance you need to make sure every user in that gaming convention was getting world-class customer experience was to make sure you could observe everything that was going across that whole network experience the whole time, instantaneously. And that's exactly what we did to make sure the event was a world-class event. I'll give you a couple of examples. Here's an example with StarCraft. We saw a sudden, all of the applications were running pretty well. We saw a sudden spike on StarCraft, not user impacting, but potentially user impacting if we didn't get on top of it. Would have led to jitter, could have led to some other issues. What we started to realize there was what was going wrong. And what was going wrong was the DDoS application that was being run by a third-party vendor was doing what it thought was the right thing, because it saw traffic coming from the application from StarCraft that looked like an attack. And so what it was doing was it was routing all of that traffic through their DDoS application to check it. Now, what we managed to do, ultimately by having this end-to-end visibility, was to very quickly identify this issue, close down that issue, and give the DDoS application the confidence that it was legitimate traffic and we could get responses back to normal. Now, today, that to a certain element is a manual process. We get all of the information, and once we've got all of the information, we pass it to a network administrator, and the network administrator makes the decision in terms of what to do. But moving forward, that's going to be an automated process. Moving forward, that's going to happen without any human intervention. And this is a game changer that data will allow us to drive as we move forward. The second kind of scenario I'd like to paint with you was with StarCraft themselves again. This time we were getting game impacting challenge across the network. And it's like when I'm at home, even with Elon Musk's Starlink, you know, when the application isn't responding properly, the first thing the kids shout is, "Dad, the Wi-Fi's not working." And I'm like, okay, let me check, make sure the Wi-Fi's working, let me make sure, you know, Starlink's working as well as it can work. But fundamentally, the vast majority of the time, it's nothing to do with the Wi-Fi, it's nothing to do with the broadband, it's something else somewhere in the network. But we always shout, "Dad, it's the Wi-Fi," first and foremost. It's my middle name now. But what we saw here was that there was no problem with the Wi-Fi in the esports arena. We saw that there was no problem with the transport network that Cisco provided. We also saw that there was no problem with the global interconnect. The problem was in the cloud. And the problem was in the cloud to such an extent with Thousand Eyes that we could identify exactly where that problem was in the cloud. We could find the IP address. We could see that it was a server utilization issue, specifically from a node in the host game provider's data center, to be able to challenge that. And very quickly we could get on top of that, and very quickly we could resolve that issue to make sure users weren't impacted. Again, using data, end-to-end data, to be able to get on top of an issue. And again, yes, it requires manual intervention today to authenticate and to prove the issue, but moving forward it will not require that. Because we're on a journey with all of our key service providers, including STC, in terms of helping them fundamentally get the best out of their network infrastructure. Yes, by building converged, simplified infrastructures. Yes, by converging IP and optical together and using SRv6 to converge services together. But fundamentally, it's about how they can use data more effectively than they've ever been able to use data before. We don't view ourselves as an IP connectivity company anymore. There's no money in IP connectivity. We view ourselves as an IP data company now. That's where the money is for the service providers to help them drive the services they want to moving forward. And that journey comes together with the ingestion all of that data into Splunk. And when we ingest all of that data into Splunk, then we get to a world where we can truly deliver autonomous capability as we move forward. And as we do that, the key benefit will come around things like AI services, because we haven't found a killer app yet on 5G in terms of being able to drive growth and user capabilities. But you saw in some of the slides earlier on today how much AI traffic is going to be pushed down to the mobile device, and how much we're going to try and do with AI moving forward. It needs to be low latency and needs to be reliable. As we start to use inferencing and RAG locally in country to be able to deliver AI-based services based on the country, we have to make sure that that data stays within the country definition. And again, we'll need to use observability technologies to make sure we can prove that and guarantee that as we move forward. So in closing, I'd like to say that AI absolutely is a game changer for every telco in the market space. It's a game changer because, yes, it will create new value-added services on the overlay network in these service factories. Yes, it will deliver optimization in the underlay networks to make sure we run more efficient networks. But fundamentally, it's going to change the game in the user experience that we deliver. And when we change the game in that user experience, we reduce churn, and we can charge more for that customer moving forward and hopefully drive more profitability into the market space. So we're definitely excited by the AI opportunity to work together with the telco industry moving forward. And I'd like to thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.